The small silver bell above the bakery door jingled softly as Daniel pushed it open. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the display window, where rows of colorful cakes gleamed like little masterpieces. Vanilla swirls, chocolate layers, strawberry hearts. The smell of warm sugar and butter wrapped around him like a memory he hadn't felt in years. Beside him, his daughter Lily tugged his sleeve, her eyes widening as she pointed toward the biggest cake in the center display. A heart-shaped one, perfectly frosted in pink, topped with bright strawberries and a tiny chocolate "Happy Birthday" sign. "Daddy!" she gasped, her voice filled with wonder. "That one! That's the one I want!" Daniel's tired face softened. "That's a pretty one, huh?" She nodded eagerly, bouncing on her toes. Her brown hair was tied into two uneven pigtails, and her shoes, a little worn out, squeaked every time she hopped. Daniel couldn't help but smile. Lily was his whole world, his light in the dark. He approached the counter. The bakery was small but cozy, shelves lined with cookies and bread, the hum of the oven in the back. Behind the counter stood Mrs. Cooper, the owner, a round woman with kind eyes and a white apron dusted with flour. "Good afternoon," she greeted warmly. "What can I get for you today?" Daniel hesitated for a moment, glancing at the cake again. "How much for that strawberry cream cake?" Mrs. Cooper looked over her shoulder and said, "That one's $35. The words hit him like a soft blow. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Inside were a few crumpled bills, a 20, a 5, and two $1 notes. $27 in total. He swallowed hard, trying not to let the disappointment show. He looked down at Lily, whose bright smile made his heart ache. "Let's see, sweetheart," he murmured. "Maybe they have something smaller." Mrs. Cooper noticed the hesitation and gently said, "We do have cupcakes, $2 each." "Same strawberry cream flavor," Lily's smile faltered. "But Daddy, it's my birthday tomorrow." Her voice was barely a whisper, fragile as glass. Daniel forced a smile. "I know, honey. And we'll make it special, I promise. Cupcakes are just little cakes, right?" She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on the big pink heart cake. At that moment, the door opened again, the bell chiming crisply. A tall man in an elegant charcoal suit stepped inside. His shoes clicked softly against the tiled floor. He carried himself with quiet confidence, polished but not proud. His name was Edward Gray, though most knew him simply as Mr. Gray, the millionaire entrepreneur who owned half the buildings downtown. He'd just come from a charity luncheon, the kind where people gave checks but rarely gave thought, and stopped by the bakery for a cup of coffee before heading home. "Good afternoon, Mr. Gray," Mrs. Cooper greeted, smiling. "Your usual coffee?" He nodded. "Yes, please." As he waited, his eyes drifted toward the little girl clutching her father's hand near the counter. He saw the man counting his money, the faint embarrassment in his posture, the quiet way he spoke, as if afraid to be overheard. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Daniel was saying. "We'll get two cupcakes instead." "You can pick the ones with the biggest strawberries," Lily nodded slowly. Her small hand clutched his fingers tighter. Mr. Gray watched silently, something stirring deep in his chest. It was a small, forgotten ache, the kind that never fully heals. He remembered his own childhood, standing beside his mother in a grocery store, watching her put things back one by one when she realized she didn't have enough. He remembered the hollow feeling in his stomach, not from hunger, but from the quiet shame of wanting too much. He cleared his throat softly and stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said, addressing Daniel with a kind smile. "I couldn't help but overhear. Is it your daughter's birthday tomorrow?" Daniel looked startled. "Oh, yes, sir. She's turning 6. Mr. Gray turned to Lily. "6? That's a wonderful age. You must be very excited." He nodded shyly, clutching her teddy bear. "I'm going to wear my sparkly dress," she whispered. Mr. Gray chuckled warmly. "That sounds perfect. You know," he said, turning toward Mrs. Cooper, "birthdays deserve real cakes, don't they?" Mrs. Cooper smiled, sensing what he was about to do. Daniel shook his head immediately. "Sir, please, you don't have to." Mr. Gray raised a hand gently. It would be my honor. I insist, he nodded to Mrs. Cooper. Please pack the strawberry cream cake for this young lady. Mrs. Cooper's face brightened as she carefully lifted the cake from the display and placed it in a white box, tying it with a red ribbon. Lily's eyes widened. That's my cake? Mr. Gray smiled. It's yours, birthday girl. She looked up at her father for confirmation, and Daniel could barely hold back the tears forming in his eyes. He nodded slowly. Yes, sweetheart. It's yours, Mrs. Cooper handed the box to Lily, who held it like a treasure. Be careful, dear, she said. It's very special. Daniel's voice was low, trembling. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. Mr. Gray's expression softened. You already have, he said. Seeing you love your daughter, that's worth more than any thank you. Daniel swallowed hard. You don't know what this means to us. Things have been hard lately. Mr. Gray placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I understand. I really do. There was a pause, a quiet, human moment where two very different worlds met. One built on wealth, the other on love and struggle. But in that moment, they were equals. Two fathers, past and future, reflecting in each other's eyes. Take care of her, Mr. Gray said softly. Children grow up faster than we think. Daniel nodded, holding back his emotion. I will. Always. Lily tugged on Mr. Gray's sleeve. Thank you, mister, she said with a toothy grin. You're like the fairy godfather from my storybook. Mr. Gray laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise even himself. Then I suppose I am, he replied warmly. Now go have the best birthday ever. As Daniel and Lily walked out, the bell above the door jingled again. Through the bakery window, Mr. Gray watched them step into the golden light of the setting sun. The little girl skipping, the father holding the cake close as if it were something sacred. He stood there for a long moment, lost in thought. Mrs. Cooper handed him his coffee quietly, her eyes soft. You've made their day, Mr. Gray, she said. He shook his head slowly. No, he replied, watching the father and daughter disappear around the corner. They've reminded me what kindness is for. The bell chimed once more as he stepped back into the fading light, carrying not just coffee, but a quiet warmth he hadn't felt in years. The first rays of morning sunlight crept through the thin curtains of a small apartment on the edge of town. The walls were bare except for a few children's drawings, taped beside a flickering wall clock. The place was simple, a second-hand couch, a wooden table with one leg slightly uneven, a small stove humming in the corner. But it was filled with something money couldn't buy. Warmth. Daniel stood at the stove, humming softly as he flipped pancakes in a worn pan. The smell of butter and syrup filled the room. Behind him, a little voice called out from the bedroom, bright and full of life. Daddy! Is it morning yet? He smiled. It sure is, birthday girl. Tiny feet pitter-pattered across the floor, and Lily came running out in her pink dress. The one with sequins on the sleeves, the same one she'd been talking about for weeks. Her hair was a little messy, and she still had sleep in her eyes, but her grin could light up the whole room. She ran straight into his arms. I'm 6, she declared proudly. He lifted her up and spun her around once, laughing. Yes, you are. My little princess is 6 years old. She giggled. Do I look older? He pretended to examine her. He tapped his chin. Maybe just a little taller. And definitely a lot more beautiful. Lily beamed, resting her head on his shoulder. Then she spotted the cake box sitting on the table. The same white box tied with a red ribbon. Her eyes went wide. Daddy, is that? He nodded. Yes, sweetheart. It's your cake. She ran to the table, climbing onto a chair to peer at it. Daniel untied the ribbon carefully and lifted the lid. There it was, the strawberry cream cake, perfect and shining in the soft morning light. The little chocolate sign still read, Happy Birthday. Lily. Lily gasped. It's even prettier than I remembered. Daniel chuckled, but there was a lump in his throat. He'd stayed up late the night before, thinking about the stranger in the bakery, the man who had appeared out of nowhere and given them a memory they'd never forget. He'd written a thank you note on a torn piece of paper and placed it inside the cake box before they left, hoping Mrs. Cooper would give it to him. It wasn't much, but it was all he could do. Now, as he watched his daughter blow on her pancakes impatiently, he felt something deep in his chest. Gratitude, hope, maybe even peace. For the first time in a long while, things felt okay. "Ready to make a wish?" he asked. She nodded eagerly. He lit the single candle in the center of the cake, and the tiny flame flickered like a heartbeat. "Okay," he said softly, crouching beside her. "Close your eyes and wish for anything you want." Lily squeezed her eyes shut, her hands clasped together. She whispered something Daniel couldn't quite hear, then blew out the candle with one joyful breath. "What did you wish for?" he asked. She smiled mischievously. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true." He laughed, shaking his head. "Fair enough." She smiled mischievously. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true." He laughed, shaking his head. "Fair enough." They cut the cake together, Daniel guiding her little hand with the knife, and shared the first slice. She licked the frosting off her finger, giggling. "It's perfect, Daddy." "The best cake ever." He smiled, but his eyes shimmered with tears. "You deserve it, sweetheart. You deserve the whole world." Meanwhile, across town, morning sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of a very different world. Mr. Gray sat in his office on the top floor of a sleek building overlooking the city. His assistant, Clara, entered quietly, holding a small white box. "This was delivered for you, sir," she said, "from Mrs. Cooper's bakery." He looked up from his laptop, puzzled. "The bakery?" "Yes, sir. She said it's from a customer yesterday." The father and daughter. Mr. Gray straightened in his chair. "Ah." He took the box carefully, his expression softening. "Thank you, Clara." She nodded and left the room, closing the door behind her. Mr. Gray untied the red ribbon and opened the box. Inside, resting on top of a piece of parchment paper, was a folded note written in a child's handwriting. He opened it slowly and his eyes fell on the words. "Greater than, thank you for making my birthday happy. You're like a hero from the stories Daddy reads to me. Love." Lily beneath the note was a small, colorful drawing. A man in a suit giving a pink cake to a little girl holding a teddy bear, with a big yellow sun shining above them. Mr. Gray stared at it for a long moment. He felt the sting of tears in his eyes. Something rare for him. His whole life had been built on numbers and deals, on boardrooms and balance sheets. But this little note, drawn in crayon, hit deeper than any business success ever had. He leaned back in his chair, looking out the window. From this height, the city stretched endlessly, full of people he'd never meet, stories he'd never hear. Yet somehow, yesterday, he had become part of one. He stood and walked to the wall beside his desk, a wall lined with awards, photographs, and framed newspaper articles about his company. He took a small pin and carefully placed Lily's drawing right in the center. The bright colors stood out against the polished frames. A reminder that kindness didn't need cameras or headlines to matter. Clara returned a few minutes later. "Sir, your meeting with the investors starts in 10. He turned and smiled faintly. "Postpone it an hour." She blinked, surprised. "Sir?" "I'm taking a walk," he said simply. "I think I've been sitting too high above the world lately." Clara smiled knowingly. "Of course, sir." He put on his coat and stepped outside. The city air was brisk, filled with the chatter of people starting their day. Across the street, a young mother held her child's hand as they crossed. A man in a delivery uniform handed an old woman her groceries. Laughter spilled from a nearby cafe. Mr. Gray paused for a moment, letting the noise of life surround him. For once, he didn't feel apart from it. He felt connected to it. Back in the small apartment, Daniel and Lily were cleaning up after breakfast. She was carefully wrapping the remaining cake slices in foil. "Maybe we can share some with Mrs. Green downstairs," she suggested. "She said she likes strawberries." Daniel smiled. "That's a wonderful idea." Lily grinned proudly. "Then she can be happy too, like us." He knelt and hugged her tightly. "You're growing up to be just like your mom," he whispered, kind and full of heart. Outside, the sun rose higher, pouring gold through the window. The camera would pull back slowly, from the humble apartment filled with laughter, to the busy streets, and finally up to the shining skyscraper, where a millionaire stared at a crayon drawing on his wall. Two very different worlds, yet bound by the same quiet truth. Sometimes one small act of kindness can echo louder than all the wealth in the world.